Welcome to the podcast formerly known as the Digital Behaviour Podcast.
If you've been following us, you might notice things sound a little different today. This episode has been a while in the making, and that's because we've been rethinking the direction of the podcast.
We started out focusing on digital behaviour, but along the way we realised that what really excited us, and hopefully you, were the people behind the work.
So moving forward, we're shifting gears. Each episode we'll be talking to professionals working across the marketing landscape.
We'll hear how they got their roles, the challenges they face, and the advice they have for anyone wanting to break into the industry.
Whether you're just starting your career or looking to pivot into something new, these stories will give you a behind-the-scenes look at how marketing careers are built and hopefully inspire your own journey.
We're excited about this new direction and the new name, A Life in Marketing. We can't wait to share these conversations with you.
Let's dive into today's episode.
Today, we're kicking off our new chapter by talking to someone whose name you might not know, but whose work you've definitely seen.
Our guest has led marketing at global giants like McDonalds and Innocent Drinks, shaping brand messages seen by millions and helping build some of the most recognizable campaigns in the industry.
We're so excited to welcome Gareth Helm, who brings a wealth of experience from both traditional and digital marketing, and who has also seen the industry evolve from the inside out. Welcome to the podcast, Gareth.
Hi, Gareth. Thank you very much for joining us today. Would you be happy to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Gareth Helm. I've been in marketing now for about 35 years and worked on a number of different brands, everything from Innocent Drinks to McDonalds to Zoopla, U-Switch, and a lot of other brands in between.
Let's start at the beginning then. As you said, you had a very, very long career sort of spanning marketing. When did you first realize that you wanted to work in marketing, and what was your first role in the industry?
So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was at university. I was actually a chemist at university. I knew one thing. I never wanted to be a chemist. And as a consequence, a friend of mine and I myself went to the Business Society and we went to lectures. And a lot of the incentive was beer and food. But we went, and one evening someone presented on hair care in the Middle East. A bizarre presentation. It was Unilever hair care in the Middle East. And something about it just captivated me. It absolutely struck a chord because it was complicated and it was all about psychology. And how do you market a product to somebody when they cover their hair? You can't see their hair. And that just struck a chord. And I actually, after that session, I got talking to Unilever, guy presenting, and I applied to Unilever. He said, apply, enjoy, and I did apply. And I managed to get into the graduate training scheme with Unilever. And I ended up saying, I'd like to work for this guy. And I did. So my first job happened to be with this one person who presented on this course. And I ended up working for Unilever in Bristol, working in the Middle East. My first job was actually based in Egypt, of all places, but very odd. That's how it all started.
And obviously it was marketing in particular.
I had no idea what marketing really was. It's funny, isn't it? You kind of go through life and I kind of obviously knew there was marketing. I saw advertising, but until I really understood what marketing was about, because I suppose I look at myself and think I am creative, but I'm also quite logical. I am that in between. And I was trying to think of what career do I want? And suddenly marketing appeared. And it was a light bulb moment. And that was it. And I was very lucky to get onto the graduate training scheme and have this fantastic, but it was very clearly, they were talking about marketing. And that was just was the moment for me.
Can't believe your first job was in Egypt.
It was very odd because they said to me, look, you can join the UK team, or would you like to go to Egypt and we'll teach you Arabic? And here's somebody who failed their French O-level GCSE, I was terrible at languages, but they gave me one-to-one language tuition in the morning. And then I went out to the sales team in the afternoon and I was working in the marketing team. And every 6 weeks, they'd give me a week off to go and travel and learn about the Middle East. It was insane, an amazing experience. I actually only left there, and this is going back a long time now, back to the 1990s, can you believe it? I left because there was unrest, and it was going back to problems in the Middle East, and they pulled people out. But it was a sensational experience. And then bizarrely, I then went to finish the rest of my graduate training. So you had these stints in different teams. They then sent me to Israel as my first role. And of course, the funny thing was that the one place I couldn't speak Arabic was in Israel. It was just like, okay, so I'm now a Middle East expert, and I'm in Israel. So yeah.
What was your first role in Israel?
I was country manager.
Okay.
And it was at a point where we were importing. We worked with local distributors. We didn't have local manufacture. And when I was there, it's funny how you sometimes land in the right place at the right time. And we ended up acquiring two businesses. And I remember hiring a helicopter, of all things, for the CEO of Unilever to come in and sign deals to buy an ice cream factory and to buy a detergents factory. It's just crazy. But it's just some things happen. You'd happen to be in the right place at the right time.
Wow, I can't believe there are many marketing jobs that involve hiring helicopters, but yeah, that's especially early on in your career as well. Well, fantastic. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation actually that you'd worked on several other brands. So you obviously moved on from Unilever and worked through various different markets, different types of brands, different types of products and services. How did you navigate those those changes that journey that you've been on? What led you to each different? Is there anything consistent about each different company that you've worked for?
I think if I maybe I'll kind of break my career down into four chunks rather than going to details. Just there's four big chunks I did. The first chunk was FMCG, and so I was at Unilever, and then I went to Nestle and Kraft, so big brands. Mars. I was in for about 15 years. I was in big brands, and that was great. And I kind of learned a lot about strategy and about kind of core principles of marketing. So strategy and objectives. It was really, really foundational. But at that time, there was new brands appearing and brands like Innocent Drinks. And I was going, they're doing it different. And I was driven by curiosity. And I was lucky enough to be the first marketing director at Innocent Drinks. And then I had about a 5-year period of time in startups. So I went from FMCG into startups. I then went from Innocent. I created a startup called Bear Snacks with some other people. I was involved in a business called Tails, a whole time of entrepreneurism. And that was just different because when you're there, I was learning all about I remember Richard Reed, he kept saying, Gareth, you want to do this, but like, how many smoothies is that going to be? It's like, that means you've got to sell 300,000 more smoothies. Literally comes down to pennies, but it makes it real. And he also used to say to me, everything communicates. And we just basically, as a consequence, everything. If you lifted up a bottom of a smoothie bottle underneath and say, stop looking at my bottom, the whole point was everything communicates. And it was very good discipline there to go. It makes you work hard in your money and makes everything work hard. That was my second phase. But then my third phase was digital marketing, where I went into Money Supermarket and Zoopla. And again, at that point, I was becoming a bit of a dinosaur, if I was honest, because I wasn't digitally native and I really needed to ramp up my skills. So I then went in and I really built those skills. And then finally, I moved into, I guess, the big guys. So Chief Marketing Officer for McDonald's, Global Chief Marketing Officer for Homeserve. And at that point, I felt like, you know what? I've got the full toolkit here. I can cover all bases. But that's how it all went through, basically. And a lot of it was like going, hang on a minute, this is really interesting. I don't really get it, but I'm really curious about that, and I need to go and do it. So I made these kind of quite big pivots.
Now, are there any particular experiences that that early on in your career that helped to lead you to the next stage? Is there anything in particular, any particular strong lessons? I mean, I imagine being in charge of big budgets and being told that if you don't sell 300,000 bottles, then this campaign is going to be a failure. That must be quite stressful, but also pretty good experience for then moving on to bigger brands as you did later on in your career.
I think the whole thing is, I think throughout all my career, I suppose I've been learning, and I'm still learning now. I think I've always felt like I'm on a learning journey. And, I realized that when I was at, I don't know, say Unilever or Nestle, that was a fabulous experience, but it was very much within a certain type of company, and there was different ways to do things. And I think I could perpetually been driven by trying to learn new skills and new behaviors. And I think that's what happened along the way. And I suppose also the one thing I learned early was the only person who cares about my career should be me. And I took charge of my career. And I think if you look at my career compared to a lot of people, I've moved around quite a lot, but I've been quite strategic, I suppose, in it. And I thought, okay, I need to get to this position. It's like kind of digital marketing. I mean, if I hadn't have made the change, what it was now, 10, 15 years ago, if I hadn't have made that change, I'd be really struggling now. I had to make that change. And I was one of those people who'd really grown up as in traditional media, traditional brand. I had to pivot, but the only person who could do that was me. And I really believe that you've got to be like, it sounds a bit cliche, a CEO of your career. You have to take charge of your career because no one else will do it for you.
The first thing that struck me, you said was it a chemist by sort of degree?
Yeah.
I mean, the first question that came to my mind then is, how did you get that the placement with Unilever? What do you think? Because on paper, obviously, if it's for a marketing role, what made them think, he might be a good fit for this graduate scheme? Was it the person who saw you? Like, do you know whether he had any sort of impact, or is it just, what do you think? Because I'm sort of thinking of, skill set or, that has helped you sort of enter the industry. And it seems to be such a unconventional way that I'm just wondering why you think they picked you.
Well, I think kind of, I'll talk about me, but maybe let's talk a bit more about the industry today as well later in terms of what you do now. Because I suppose in those days, I think it was a blend of analytical skills and creativity. And I suppose in a sense, I was able to demonstrate that I had skills in terms of understanding, looking at data and coming up with plans and strategies. And I could say that through my science background and actually how I was using data, and actually the certain side of chemistry I was involved in was crystallography of all things. But there were certain things we were doing in that area which were meaning that we had having to analyze things and create assumptions and then strategies and plans. And I was able to kind of talk that, but at the same time, they would demonstrate creativity. And I happened to be running some societies at the university, and I was able to demonstrate creativity. And I suppose it was this sort of blend of science, of data with creativity. And in those days, I think it was slightly easier because when I joined, there was people studying history and English and chemistry. I think it was really showing that you understood what marketing was and you had these foundational skills. And on top of that, I think it's probably kind of connecting with people that you could relate. Because you want to have somebody who you get on with, and it's like you've got to have that interpersonal skills. And so I suppose I was lucky that I'd met this guy. I don't know to this day actually if he did say anything. I don't think he did, but I went through the process. I went through various interviews, and I think it comes down to could you show yourself with the right skills and you got on with people.
I was interested. I think you mentioned the third stage of your career was more about digital, because I imagine that obviously during the late noughties, we had the emergence of social media. But even before that, we had the sort of millennium and the emergence of lots of websites and lots of money being made in that as well. The the bubble, the tech bubble. So you've seen some big changes during your career in terms of how digital is being used by consumers. I just wondered whether that's changed the way that you think sort of strategically as well, whether that's changed your thinking, the fact that people can now engage with brands in so many different ways, and also sort of, reply rather than just looking at a billboard, for example, and accept a message. They can actually respond and share and engage with the brand in ways that they probably couldn't when you started your career.
Yeah. I mean, crikey, it's funny. If I go back to when I first started my career, it was easy. It was easy, really. I mean, if you had the money, you could do big broadcasts and you could reach, 70, 80% of the population very easily with TV and radio. Very quickly, you could get mass reach very quickly. And nobody really scrutinized your brand message because there wasn't the internet. I mean, and it was unbelievable what we could do. I mean, there was also, what you said had to be factually correct, but actually, there wasn't the internet. So it was very different. And then, of course, we've gone through web, email, and then kind of into today. And it's now unbelievably complicated. I mean, the ecosystem is just so complicated. And the way, I mean, the analysis also you can do, because when I first started, I mean, it was, you could broadly track things, but it was always kind of a bit sort of thin on the ground what you could really measure. And now you can measure everything. it's unbelievable. So everything has changed phenomenally. I think that what this means is that, I mean, when you are doing campaign planning, I mean, the strategy is the same, the targeting is the same, the key principles are exactly the same, but you have got an infinite number of choices. And I think you've got to also think far more deeply about the customer journey, because it isn't just one-way traffic. You've got to think, well, what's that customer going to do? And then think about that buying journey, about what will be the messages as they go down the funnel, so you can convince them all the way down and kind of add complementary messages in different medias to kind of get your point across. So you are thinking about building a campaign which does start with broadcast, so you build awareness, but you then got to think about what that customer's going to do next, and having the right sort of media all the way down through to purchase, so that they buy it. So that's a whole different kind of marketing approach, but still builds one's core foundations of understanding who you're targeting and what your message is.
It's interesting, and actually pleased that you mentioned the funnel. Then there's been a bit of debate around whether there is still a funnel, whether funnel should still apply to marketing strategies. I think Google talk about the middle of the funnel being sort of a messy middle, that people don't go from top to bottom in a linear fashion anymore. They sort of get bumped around like in a washing machine, and they look at this and they look at that, and then they get influenced by that and something else. But ultimately, you can still say that there are stages. There is, whether you call it AIDA or something else, there are still stages that people pass through, whether even if they are taking a bit longer at some stages.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I think people just don't necessarily take. Well, some people do. Some people might just see one piece of communication and that's it, and they're straight through, and you go through the funnel. But I think there are different people who take different journeys, and I think you've just got to understand what is the magic pathway you want to take them down. Actually, have thought that through and say, okay, if this happens, we've got this content ready for them. We've got some Q&A. It just depends upon what the product is, but I think you can be canny and make that journey as seamless and helpful as possible. So if they are going to consider things, then you've got wider information and you've thought it through. So I still believe you've got to use multiple media to kind of help people through the journey and through the funnel.
As you can imagine, we've got obviously students coming through every year, and they are getting younger, and they are getting more. Most of them don't even remember the traditional sort of way of doing marketing, or not having the internet, not having social media. Do you think there's still a big divide between sort of digital and traditional marketers, or do you think that's completely sort of disappeared? Like, you couldn't just be either traditional or digital nowadays?
Well, I think nowadays everyone has grown up in the digital ecosphere, so it's in their blood. It's like, so I think you can't necessarily be a traditional brand person and a digital person. I just don't think that really exists. I think you brand people have got, the brand people I know have got digital foundations to what they do. They have to have digital foundations. I think that the interesting thing for me is just it's short term versus long term. And I think that this is where it always gets difficult, because digital marketing can have a very clear short-term effect. And I think brand building is longer term, and it's how you blend those two sides together. Because I think in a business, you've got to have the ability to kind of see the performance and obviously be on your digital data and actually kind of see things working, but also make sure you are doing long-term brand building, because your marketing activity can pivot, and you can realize to a certain extent what you're putting out isn't necessarily long term. It's not kind of differentiating you. It's kind of almost like driving short term sales, as opposed to really building your brand and making you stand out in the long term.
Do you think there are any particular skills that are non-negotiable for someone entering the industry, or even trying to create a career pathway through the industry right now? Is there anything in particular you'd say, actually, you need to know this inside out, because you're not going to survive the next 20, 30 years without knowing this?
Well, I think the thing is, you've got to be, data is so important. There's three things for me which people need to be good at. You've got to be good with data nowadays. I think you've got to be able to analyze data and feel comfortable with data. I think you've got to be strategic. And by strategic, that also means priorities and choices, and just being able to make choices. But I think probably what tops it all is creativity, because it's great creative campaigns, end up winning the awards and driving sales. And it's almost like the risk is you become very data analytical and very strategic, but there's no magic. And I think you've got to have that magic. And I think there is, the campaigns I've done in the past, you you can sometimes think it's all fine, but there's just literally this final little 5%, and it takes off, and you find that fine, and it's that's just trying to be able to kind of be creative and find that little magical little twist, and that's what takes off. And I think that is so important, because that's the difference between a great marketeer and an average marketeer.
Do you have any advice, Gareth, on how, again, students or somebody trying to break into the industry, how they could demonstrate their creativity? Do you think sort of the traditional portfolio is still something that, is worth for people to work on, or how would you say might be a best way of sort of demonstrating that creativity?
Well, it's funny because I think that people apply, and I always think all of us are brands. We're all brands. And actually, you've got to think about yourself as you are marketing yourself. And how am I going to market myself to somebody? And it's funny how I kind of feel like people then send an email in and a CV, and it's just like, where's the creativity? It's just like, it can be incredibly dull. I remember one day, and this is like going back a while, but I still think it's true. When I was at an Innocent one day, this guy sent me some baked cupcakes one morning. And it basically, on the cupcakes, he'd written something, I can't remember what it was, but to me, it was just like, and he was basically wanting a job. And it was like, he was cut through everything. We were advertising at the time for a job, and he cut through everything. It was just insane what he did. But I think it's how do you end up standing out in that crowd? Because you don't just do an email, a cover letter, and a CV. You've got to have something a bit different. And I think right now, for example, on LinkedIn, I mean, I always sort of say to people, if you really want to work for a company, find out who the company is, find people who work for that company, put that little alert bell on them on LinkedIn, follow their messaging, see what they're writing about, and every now and again, comment on what they're writing about. And then after a period of time, then comment and actually link a little message or something you found around it. And it's be fascinating. Over time, you start building a relationship with that person. And then you might be able to send them something. But it's showing you're being kind of clever. It's showing you're not just being passive and here's my CV, here's my letter. You've just got to engage. And I think think about your brand, think about how you engage, be really targeted with people, but try and find clever ways to connect with people. And sometimes, you might well in the end send them some cupcakes. I mean, I know it's extreme, but demonstrate some creativity about how are you going to cut through. Don't just rely upon what everyone else is doing. Everyone else is sending a letter and a CV. The average amount of time people spend on a CV is 7 seconds. Mm. So how do you cut through against 7 seconds? LinkedIn profiles, 7 seconds. There's no time. So you've got to do something different.
Mm. You said earlier the industry has changed in terms of, not necessarily accepting sort of degrees that aren't as related as they, could have been to the actual job that you're working. Do you think nowadays that's still true? Or do you think, given that there are more sort of marketing degrees, digital marketing degrees in particular, do you think somebody without a degree in the field still stands a chance to enter the marketing field, or do you think that time has gone?
I suppose when I look at a CV, I look at it in the round. And I think this is where you start differentiating different people, because I think it does help having a marketing background. I think what's also really important is to show you've had some experience if you can. I know it's really hard, but just trying to get some free experience anywhere is just important. But I think it's just what else have you done? I remember years ago recruiting somebody, and I think he was doing history, and but he started his own business on Hadrian's Wall selling ice cream, and it was like, and he run this business, and he basically contacted the council, and he said, I'd like to set up business, and what I'll do is I'll keep an eye on the cars and protect the cars because there'd been break-ins. He built a business case. He bought himself some ice creams and a bike and whatever, and he'd run a business for a year. And to me, he had learned more about marketing in that experience than, he really worked about it. He was on Facebook as promote. He had learned so much. And I think what can you do cleverly to make yourself stand out like that? So I think digital marketing is fantastic, really great experience. But what else can you do? And I think, try and get experience in business. If you can't get it, try and figure out for yourself. And this guy spent, I don't know, 30 quid or something. It didn't cost him much to get a nice, and then off he went. And I just think that's That's what I'd be looking for. Someone showing a bit of spark, a bit of flair, thought about, saw a problem, saw an opportunity and went for it.
We often find that on our degrees, undergraduate and postgraduate, particularly undergraduate, those students who do better in their final year are those that have maybe had a placement that really helped, going out into the real world, the industry, and learning what it's actually like sitting at a desk doing marketing. But also those students that have started a business on the side. I remember a student who was a personal trainer. We had a couple of students now who were influencers, lots and lots of followers, but they're running themselves as a business basically. And that really helps when it comes to understanding how to apply the stuff they're learning in the classroom, strategy, and even specific tactics like how to run particular adverts on different platforms. They really get it much more when they've actually had that experience of doing it. And as you say, you don't have to necessarily go and do a placement. You can actually just do something on the side. You could sell bits and pieces on Amazon or eBay or something, and just get that experience of what it's actually like, and feeling that pressure, knowing that if you don't get it right, you don't sell anything.
Well, I mean, on that, I employed one person who had started a business doing trainer refurb, and he was doing great sales and just buying and selling trainers. But in a sense, you could see he'd set himself up. He'd set himself up an Instagram page. He'd basically gone through the effort and created an account, and you could see what he was doing. I thought, well, that's, I mean, it complemented. It showed there was a bit more to him than just doing the digital marketing. He had done a bit more, and I think that, you want somebody who goes a little bit further, and I think that does make a difference. So you get the experience, but try and show how you've how you've applied it in whatever way you can do it. And it can be everything, as you say, from personal training to selling trainers, anything.
So if we had to summarize the last just 5 minutes, in terms of somebody breaking into sort of marketing job today, I'll say almost it's all about demonstrating that you can do rather than just that right? So really that going the extra mile, demonstrating that you're not afraid of actually getting stuck in and doing things is something you would recommend as crucial for new talent entering the market.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yes, I completely agree. And I just think, and I wouldn't get hung up about it having to be a placement. I mean, I kind of think it's, and in some ways, I know it's so hard to get placement. It's really hard. But if you can't get one, try. This is an opportunity. I'd say be creative. Make that an opportunity for yourself. Say, what can I do which is going to be kind of useful and effective on my CV in the long run? I just do think it really does help. It just brings things to life in a much more vivid way. And you're also going to run into challenges. And it's quite nice when you talk to people who have had problems doing their own thing or struggling. And that shows depth and kind of real personality. You can see people who've struggled, not just been doing, but they've really had to manage things and work out problems.
Before we give you we've got some quick fire questions just to finish off, if that's okay. But we've talked a lot about the early stages of your career and how that might be used by students or people at the early stages of their current careers. What have you got to in your own career right now? What are you up to now? What would people get from connecting with you and working with you at the moment?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of, in a sense, I've left permanent career. I've left the kind of permanent side of things, and I now am in this world which is called portfolio, whatever that means. I mean, it's sort of like a fruit salad, I suppose. But for me, I'm a non-executive director, which means I help large businesses, and I'm on their board. I attend their board meetings. I'm there kind of once a month, helping them with transformation and growth. I'm also an interim. I go into companies, and I might be there for periods of time to help them when people might be on maternity leave or there's a gap, someone's left, and I help them fill in. And thirdly, I'm actually kind of bizarrely a career coach, but I'm a career coach very much at a kind of a C-suite executive level. So I'm helping at that level too. So I try to kind of use my experience, I suppose, to mainly help drive growth, whether that be company growth or individual personal growth.
Great. Is that an area that marketers are finding, new opportunities in? And I've got a friend who's a fractional CTO, Chief Technical Officer. I've known for a long time of, FD UK and FD Centre, so financial directors who go in and sort of do bits of work, sort of part-time for different businesses. Is that an area that you've seen other marketers go into to do something similar for marketing?
I think there is a whole. I mean, there are people who are make a career out of fractional or interim work. So you can absolutely go in and do that. I think that what I find with some people want to sort of stay perm. Some people then want to have a bit more variety. I mean, I love the variety now. I mean, for me, I just love the variety of working with many, many different companies and dropping in. And so at the moment, I'm in travel. Wow, that's amazing. I've never been in travel before, but I've been in property, I've been in boilers, I've been in burgers. I love the variety of it, and I'm very lucky to do it. But I think it's an area whereby people do sometimes need short-term impact. And that's what I try and do. I'm sure many other people do, like, for example, your CTO friend.
Great. Well, thank you very much for giving up your time. We really appreciate it. And obviously your time is precious now that you're billing your time. So before we wrap up, we've got a few quick fire questions, if that's okay. All relatively straightforward and lighthearted. So first question is, have you got a favorite marketing campaign of all time?
So whenever I answer this question, it always changes. I don't know why, but it always changes. But I think what struck me now, probably maybe more in my career now, is I really like campaigns with purpose, because I just feel they unify a business as much as make an impact on the consumer. And I suppose that's why I go back to things like, it's slightly cliche, like the campaign for Real Beauty with Dove, because I just think it had a wider social purpose, and I can see that unifying a business and a team. And it was, that was back in 2005 or something. It was, this is an old campaign, which to this day they're still using, and that's amazing. And I just believe in, I love challenger brands, that whole idea of challenger brands. And that's when you have a real North Star purpose vision. And I think, Dove just nailed it, the campaign Real Beauty.
Right. Is there a tool or an app that you can't live without? Doesn't have to be marketing, I don't think.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Or actually ChatGPT now, probably.
Right. Underrated skill in digital marketing that you think people don't necessarily rate at the moment?
Well, I suppose I touched it earlier. I think there is this need to get close to consumers, and it's where creativity comes in. So you can do all the analysis, but you've just got to spend time talking to consumers to find the real subtlety of communication, getting communication absolutely right. And sometimes I think people rush through things and they don't talk and get the words right and get the language correct, because that is the extra 5-10%, which means a campaign can just take off.
Great. And last question, what's the biggest misconception about marketers, do you think?
It's staggering. I still find in some companies, people still regard it as the kind of colouring in club. I just find it just makes me chuckle sometimes. It's just some people, but I just like, oh, that's what you've got. Or they see it as a cost on the balance sheet. I just go like, I don't know, but that just makes me chuckle. It's very much very certain types of individuals. I can almost like pinpoint them, but some people still believe that. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for all your time. If people want to connect with you, would you recommend? You mentioned LinkedIn just then. Would you recommend LinkedIn?
People do, and I'm always talking to people, and I'm always happy to help people out. So if people want to connect, please just drop me a line and we'll have a chat.
Fantastic, Gareth. It was really a pleasure talking to you, and thanks again for being on our podcast today.
No, pleasure to be here too. Thank you.